crap, look who it is. Baby boy, baby girl, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Glad you made it. It's another so-so production. Which day is it? Doesn't even matter. Who cares? It's today. It's right now. You're seeing it in real, well, not in real time, but it almost is real time. It's always real time around here. Hope you're all doing well. What do we do here? We talk about everything and nothing. And today we're going to just keep it loose as a goose. Read a few articles, go over maybe a declassified document. Who knows? We'll just mix it up, have a little bit of fun. We're going to do a little bit of, recreational reading. Let's do a little bit of reading together. We'll get you out of here in no time. If you like these videos, go ahead and show it by liking the likes on Instagram. Follow me on YouTube by searching Rob Sadri and subscribe for the full-length videos. You want to support your boy fiscally, financially, you want to put something through, go on Patreon. That's what it's there for. Without further ado, let's get into it. First and foremost, we're going to start off with a article that I found on The Guardian. Just caught my attention. Let's read it together. It's called the Pandora Papers. Biggest ever leak of the offshore data exposes financial secrets of rich and powerful. Dun, dun, dun. Let's see what this bad boy is all about. That's what it is, baby. It's raining outside. Let's get litty. We're already litty. Always litty. Let's read a couple of articles, have a little bit of fun. All right. Pandora Papers. Millions of documents reveal offshore deals and assets of more than 100 billionaires, 30 world leaders, and 300 public officials. Secret deal and hidden assets of some of the world's richest and most powerful people have been revealed in the biggest trove of leaked offshore data in history. Branded the Pandora Papers, the cache includes 11.9 million files from companies hired by wealthy clients to create offshore structures and trusts in tax havens such as Panama, Dubai, Monaco, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands. They expose the secrets of offshore affairs of 35 world leaders, including current and former president, prime ministers, and head of states. They also shine a light on the secret finances of more than 300 other public officials, such as government ministers, judges, mayors, and military generals in more than 90 countries. Sweet! The files include disclosures about major donors to the Conservative Party, raising difficult questions for Boris Johnson and his party meets for its annual conference. More than 100 billionaires feature in the leaked data, as well as celebrities, rock stars, and business leaders. Many use shell companies to hold luxury items such as property and yachts, as well as incognito bank accounts. There is even art ranging from looted Cambodian antiques to paintings by Picasso and murals by Banksy. The Pandora Papers reveal the inner workings of what is a shadow financial world, providing a rare window into the hidden operations of a global offshore economy that enables some of the world's richest people to hide their wealth and in some cases pay little or no tax. Surprise, surprise, guess who's not paying the tax? All right. Their emails, memos, incorporation records, share certificates, compliance reports, and complex diagrams showing labyrinth corporate structures. Often they allow the true owners of the OPEC shell companies to be identified for the first time. The files were leaked to the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, ICIJ, in Washington. It shared access to the leaked data with select media partners, including The Guardian, BBC Panorama, Le Monde, and The Washington Post. More than 600 journalists have sifted through the files as a part of a massive global investigation. Dun 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 dun. The Pandora Papers represents the latest and largest in terms of data volume and series of major leaks of financial data that have convulsed the offshore world since 2013. Setting up or benefiting from the offshore entities is not itself illegal, and in some cases people may have legitimate reasons such as security for doing so. You're just being secure there. Okay. But the secrecy offered by tax havens has at times proven attractive to tax evaders, fraudsters, and money launderers, some of whom are exposed in the files. Interesting. Keep reading. All right. Other wealthy individuals and companies stash their assets offshore to avoid paying taxes elsewhere, a legal activity estimated to cost governments billions in lost revenues. After more than 18 months analyzing the data in the public interest, The Guardian and other media outlets will publish their findings over the coming days, beginning with the revelations about the offshore financial affairs of some of the most powerful political leaders in the world. They include the ruler of Jordan, King Abdullah II, or not the first, King Abdullah II, bro deuces, who leaked documents reveal has amassed a secret $100 million property empire spanning Malibu, Washington, and London. The King of Jordan declined to answer specific questions, but said there would be nothing improper about him owning properties via offshore companies. Jordan appeared to have blocked the ICIJ website on Sunday, hours before the Pandora Papers launched. All right. The files also showed that the Azerbaijan ruling Aliyev family has traded close to 400 million pounds of UK property in recent years. One of their properties was sold to the Queen's Crown Estate, which is now looking into how it came to pay 67 million pounds to a company that operated as a front for the family that runs a country routinely accused of corruption. The Aliyevs declined to comment, of course. Pandora Papers also threatened to cause political upsets for two European Union leaders. The Prime Minister of Czech Republic, Andrej Babiš, who is up for election this week, is facing questions over why he used an offshore investment company to acquire $22 million chateau in the south of France. He too declined to comment. Again, really neat stuff. And in Cyprus itself, a controversial offshore center, the president, Nikos Anastasiadis, man, that's a hard last name. All right, Nikos, may be asked to explain why a law firm he founded was accused of hiding the assets of controversial Russian billionaire behind fake company owners. The firm denies any wrongdoing, while the Cypriot president says he ceased having an active role in its affairs after becoming leader of the opposition in 1997. Not everyone named in the Pandora Papers is accused of wrongdoing. The leaked files reveal that Tony and Sherry Blair saved £312,000 in property taxes when they purchased a London building partially owned by the family of a prominent Bahraini minister. The former Prime Minister and his wife bought the £6.5 million office in Marylebone. By acquiring British Virgin Islands BVI offshore company. While the move was not illegal and there is no evidence that Blair's proactively sought to avoid property taxes, the deal highlights a loophole that has enabled wealthy property owners not to pay tax that is commonplace for ordinary Britons. The leaked records vividly illustrate the central coordinating role London plays in the murky offshore world. The UK capital is home to wealth managers, law firms, company formation agents, and accountants all exist to serve the ultra-rich clients. Many are foreign-born tycoons who enjoy non-domicile status, which means they pay no tax on their overseas assets. Interesting. You don't say. Ukraine's president, Vladimir Zelensky, who was elected in 2019 on a pledge to clean up his country's notoriously corrupt and oligarch-influenced economy, is also named in the leak. During the campaign, Zelensky transferred his 25% stake in an offshore company to a close friend who now works as the president's top advisor. The file suggests Zelensky declined to comment, and it is unclear if he remains a beneficiary. The Russian President Vladimir Putin, good old Putin, dude, whom the U.S. suspects of having a secret fortune, does not appear in the files by name, but numerous close associates do, including his best friend from childhood, the late Peter Kolbin. Convenient, right? That he's late. Whom critics have called a wallet for Putin's own wealth, and a woman the Russian leader was allegedly once romantically involved with. None responded to the invitations to comment. The Pandora Papers also place a revealing spotlight on the offshore system itself, in a development likely to prove embarrassing for the U.S. President Joe Biden, who has pledged to lead efforts internationally to bring transparency to the global financial system. U.S. emerges from the leak as a leading tax haven. The file suggests that the state of South Dakota in particular is sheltering billions of dollars in wealth linked to individuals previously accused of serious financial crimes. Cool beans. The offshore trail also stretches from Africa to Latin America to Asia and is likely to pose difficult questions for politicians across the world. In Pakistan, Munis Elahi, prominent minister and Prime Minister Imran Khan's government, contracted an offshore provider in Singapore about investing $33.7 million. In Kenya, the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, has portrayed himself as an enemy of corruption. In 2018, Kenyatta, he told the BBC, every public servant's assets must be declared publicly so that people can question and ask what is legitimate. He will come under pressure to explain why he and his close relatives amassed more than $30 million offshore wealth, including property in London. Kenyatta did not respond to inquiries about whether his family wealth was declared to relevant authorities in Kenya. The Pandora Papers also reveal some of the unseen repercussions of previous offshore leaks, which spurred modest reforms in some parts of the world, such as the BVI, which now keeps a record of the real owners of companies registered there. However, the newly leaked data shows money sifting around offshore destinations as wealthy clients and their advisors adjust to new realities. Some clients of the Mossack Fonseca, hoping I'm pronouncing that right, the now defunct law firm at the heart of the 2016 Panama Papers disclosures simply transferred their companies to rival providers such as another global trust and corporate administrator with a major office in London whose data is in the new trove of leaked files. Asked why he was migrating to the new company, one customer wrote bluntly, business decision to exit following the Panama Papers. Another agent said the industry had always adapted to external pressure. Some leaked files appear to show some in the industry seeking to circumvent new privacy regulations. One Swiss lawyer refused to email the names of his high-value customers to a service provider in the BVI following new legislation. Instead, he sent them by airmail, with strict instructions they should not be processed in any electronic way. The identity of another beneficial owner was shared via WhatsApp. Purpose of this was to to enable you to comply with BVI rules, the lawyer wrote, referring to Mossack Fonseca. The lawyer added, "You're obliged to keep secrecy of our clients and to not make feasible at all a second Panama Papers story that happened to one of our competitors." Gerard Ryle, the director of the ICIJ, said leading politicians who organized their finances in tax havens had a stake in the status quo and were likely to be an obstacle to reform of the offshore economy. When you have world leaders, when you have politicians, when you have public officials all using the secrecy and all using this world, then I don't think we're going to see an end to it. Interesting. The Pandora Papers, the article is on The Guardian. Go ahead and check it out for yourself. But I just read it for you. Verbatim, baby. That's how we do it around here. Hope you're all doing well. We're mixing it up, you guys. We're going off the script. We're gonna go this week. Try a little something different. As always, experimenting. But I found that article kind of interesting because it just shines a light on, again, global corruption in the financial system. A lot of times, a lot of people would be doing, they'd be playing Shelly, dude. I'm not talking about playing with their, pet turtle or nothing. They'd be creating them shell companies, different names. You got a wife, you got a kid, you got an aunt, you got a best friend from childhood. So you can, you just start shuffling money around. You start greasing pockets. You start doing a lot of, pulling in the strings, using a lot of nepotism, using a lot of, cronyism. I like that word, cronyism. I like that word. Heard it last week or a week or two ago. Great word, not my word, of course, but all this, just it's the old, how do you get rid of corruption? Because that's the thing. It's like, especially nowadays, we're heading into an age of we're trying to be more transparent. Part of that is great. Part of that is supposed to be so that we all kind of get an equal and level playing field, but it seems like the rich and the ultra rich, the multi-millionaires, the ones that have a lot of power, they're in power positions, it seems that they're always able to, find little ways, back alleys, back doors of, paying a lawyer, paying an accountant, creating other companies, laundering this, laundering that, and buying property here, buying property there, creating different companies, while the average folk who's making less than 100K a year is getting taxed ridiculously, right? Give or take, whatever you're you know what I'm talking about. If you're just a hard day, everyday go-getter grinder type, but that's you're just you're the average person out there doing it. You get taxed a lot. They're in your business. Everybody's taking a little bit off whatever you are that you're making, as hard as you're trying, and it seems like the rich people just don't play by the same rules. So how do we get rid of these tax evasions, these shell companies, and not all of them, of course, in the inquiry, not all of them are doing that. Some of them are just legitimate businesses as well, I would imagine. But there's definitely a lot of people that are doing sketchy business as well, doing a lot of, lot of that corrupt business. But that's the thing. I wonder where it's going to go. I wonder how this transparency is going to kick in. Doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, again, if it goes back to us having to, you know, formulate a banking system or think about a way where we can get access to everybody's public record, I don't know how I feel about that. I honestly don't know how I feel about that. Everybody can see through your banking, your medical history, for the sake of being transparent, but it just doesn't make the playing field that much more level anyway, because the ultra rich will always remain ultra rich, and you'll be, if you happen to be on the, you know, if you're just like working class, or I don't even know what that means, working class. If you're, you know, if you're not rich, if you're not rich, you're gonna have a lot of detriments. Again, we're stepping into a timeline of social credit systems, social credit records, demerit points perhaps, for you, you know, everything. Did you vote? Did you get your vaccine? Did you know, what kind of grades did you? Everything's just getting very much organized, and it seems like, at least, and that's the thing, even if it comes to a point of pure transparency where we get to see everybody's, and I mean everybody's, for real paperwork, again, it becomes still a world of haves and have-nots. So I don't know how much this kind of stuff happens all the time. This article, I found it interesting. I thought I'd share it with you guys. But what do you guys think? How do we get rid of corruption and the lessening? How do we lessen the gap? How do we lessen the gap? Because, you know, especially times like this, I know in Canada our CRB is coming to an end. In a lot of places, maybe you got a little bit of government funding, maybe you didn't. It's been rough for everybody, but that in Canada is coming to an end very shortly. And, you know, talks and discussions of universal basic income are still very much alive and kicking, and I don't have the answers. I don't know what I just don't see how we can go on having to deal with the rate of inflation in our society, the rate of how everything's getting so expensive, whether it's food, everyday commodities, whether it's gas, clothing, produce, housing. All these things keep skyrocketing while the wages remain the same. So I don't see how that's going to work. Do we have to implement some sort of a universal basic income? We definitely can't afford it. Is it detrimental? Is it beneficial? Who knows? But at this point, I'm just wondering, how much more debt can we collectively accumulate and, you know, still have people go out there and try to make ends meet? Just asking questions, trying to figure it out together. Good times. All right. Next article that I found a little bit interesting. Actually, I haven't read this one. Read another version, but this one's in the CBC website. Controversial Philippine leader Rodrigo Duterte announces plan to retire from politics. Let's read this one. Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte on Saturday announced he was retiring from politics and dropping plans to run for vice president in the next year's elections when his term ends, avoiding a legal battle with opponents who question such a move. Speaking before reporters, Duterte said many Filipinos have expressed their opposition to his vice presidential bid in surveys and public forums. The overwhelming sentiment of the Filipino is that I'm not qualified, and it would be a violation of the Constitution, Duterte said. In obedience to the will of the people, I will follow what you wish, and today I announce my retirement from politics. I'm not going to read the whole article, but essentially he's retiring when his term ends. But it's just, I don't know too much about him. I've seen a little bit of him, obviously, in the past few years on news media outlets. I know there was he took on a big war on drugs in Philippines. He came under a lot of scrutiny for going out there and killing people, essentially, just murdering thousands of people, some children apparently as well. So, you know, it's kind of convenient for him to be like, all right, it's time for me to hang up the gloves and go retire, and, you know, I've listened to the people, and that's, you know, it's with, it was just interesting. It just seems like a little, because I believe, if I'm not being mistaken, by the International Criminal Court, I think he's being, him or his party or office are being investigated for crimes against humanity, if I'm not mistaken. And again, do your own research, but it's interesting. And this type of stuff happens all the time with politicians and murder and politicians. And, you know, this saying goes, the way I try to make sense of it is kind of like, you know, not all Masons are Shriners, but all Shriners are Masons, and not all murderers and killers are politicians, but all politicians are murderers and killers, or killers. You know what I'm saying? And different levels to that game as well, which is weird and interesting. So yeah, what do you guys think? That kind of goes hand in hand with all these probably different other politicians who were probably named in the Pandora Papers. You know, everybody's rubbing elbows with it's a world that we're living in, filled with beautiful things, but also weird, kooky things going on all the time as well. Am I right? Just saying. All right. Last but not least, this is gonna be a long read, boys and girls. All right, but we're gonna get into it. And I'm not quite sure if I'll finish the entire thing, but I did want to introduce it to you guys. It's been on the internet for some time. You know, I just came across it a little while ago, skimmed through it. It seemed interesting to me. It's a topic of interest to me, and I'll share a little bit of it with you guys and let you guys maybe go discover it on your own if you like. Okay, this bad boy is called all right, Analysis and Assessment of Gateway Process. All right, Project Gateway. CIA.gov/ReadingRoom/doc/CIA-RD-P96-00788R0016-5.pdf. That's where you can find it. 29 pages. Let's read a little bit. Subject: Analysis and Assessment of Gateway Process. And again, this has been declassified, it's been talked about. This is just a little PDF file that you can find online. Get a little bit of information about things that you might be interested in. All right, Analysis and Assessment of Gateway Process. To Commander, U.S. Army, Operational Group, Fort Meade, blah, blah, blah. Boom, here we go. Number 1. You tasked me to provide an assessment of the gateway experience in terms of its mechanics and ultimate practicality. As I set out to fulfill that tasking, it soon became clear that in order to assess the validity and practicality of the process, I indeed need to do enough supporting research and analysis to fully understand how and why the process works. Frankly, sir, that proved to be, I should make this a little bit larger. That proved to be an extremely involved and difficult business. Initially, based on conversations with a physician who took the gateway training with me, I had recourse to the biomedical models developed by Isaac Benetov to obtain information concerning the physical aspects of the process. Then I found it necessary to delve into various sources for information concerning quantum mechanics in order to be able to describe the nature and functioning of human consciousness. I had to be able to construct a scientifically valid and reasonably lucid model of how consciousness functions under the influence of the brain hemisphere synchronization technique employed by Gateway. Once this was done, the next step involved recourse to the theoretical physics in order to explain the character of the time-space dimension and the mean by which expanded human consciousness transcends it in achieving Gateway's objectives. Finally, I again found it necessary to use physics to bring the whole phenomenon of out-of-body states into the language of physical science, to remove the stigma of its occult connotations and put it in a frame of reference suited to objective assessment. All right. Two, I began the narrative by briefly profiling the fundamental biomedical factors affecting such related techniques as hypnosis, biofeedback, and transcendental meditation, so that their objectives and mode of functioning could be compared in the reader's mind with the gateway experience as a model of its underlying mechanics first developed. Additionally, that introductory material is useful and is supporting the conclusions of the paper, I indicate that at times these related techniques may provide useful entry points to accelerate movement into the gateway experience. Niels Bohr, the renowned physicist, once responded to his son's complaints about the obtuse nature of certain concepts in physics by saying, "You're not thinking, you're merely being logical. The physics of altered human consciousness deals with some conceptualizations that are not easily grasped or visualized exclusively in the context of ordinary left brain linear thinking." So, to borrow Dr. Bohr's mode of expression, parts of this paper will require not only logic but a touch of right brain intuitive insight to achieve a complete, comfortable grasp of the concepts involved. Nevertheless, once that is done, I'm confident that their construction and application will stand up to the test of rational critique. Interesting. Paradoxically, having gone to such great lengths to avoid trying to render judgments based on an occult or dogmatic frame of reference, in the end I found it necessary to return at least briefly to the question of the impact of the gateway experience on common belief systems. I did so because although it was essential to avoid attempting to render an assessment in the context of such systems, I felt that it was necessary, after having completed an analysis, to point out that the resulting conclusions do not do any violence to fundamental mainstream of either Eastern or Western belief systems, unless that point is clearly established. The danger exists that some people will reject the whole concept of the gateway experience in the mistaken belief that it contradicts and is therefore alien to all that they hold to be right and true. This study is certainly not designed to be the last word on the subject, but I hope that the validity of its basic structure and of the fundamental concepts upon which it is based will make it a useful guide for the USA and personnel who are required to take the gateway training or work with gateway materials. USAINSCOM. All right. The gateway experience, brain hemisphere synchronization and perspective. Introduction. Sip to you guys. Good times, fun times. Introduction. In order to describe the Monroe Institute technique for achieving altered states of consciousness, the gateway experience involving brain hemisphere synchronization, or Hemisink, that Hemisink baby, the most effective way to begin is to the portion of the words are cut off at the edge. Briefly profile the basic mechanics which underline operation of the related methods such as hypnosis, transcendental meditation, and biofeedback. So that's again hypnosis, transcendental meditation, and biofeedback. Interesting. It is easiest to effectively describe what gateway is by beginning with a short description of those associated techniques that share some common aspects with the gateway experience, out of which are nevertheless different. In this way, we can develop a frame of reference at the outset which will provide useful concepts to explain and understand gateway by comparison as we proceed. Number 2, hypnosis. According to the theories of psychologist Ronald Stone and the biomedical engineering models of Isaac Bentov, I'm sorry about that, it's just, Isaac Bentov, hypnosis is basically a technique which permits acquisition of direct access to the sensory motor cortex and pleasure centers and lower cerebral emotional portions and associated pleasure centers of the right side of the human brain following successful disengagement of the stimulus screening functions of the left hemisphere of the brain. The left hemisphere of the brain is the self-cognitive, verbal, and linear reasoning component of the mind. It fulfills the functions of screening incoming stimuli by categorizing, assessing, and assigning meaning prior to allowing passage to the right hemisphere of the brain. The right hemisphere, which functions as the non-critical, holistic, nonverbal, and pattern-oriented component of the brain, appears to accept what the left hemisphere passes to it without question. Consequently, if the left hemisphere can be distracted either through boredom or through reduction to a soporific soporific. Come across new words. Reduction to a soporific semi-sleep state. External stimuli to include hypnotic suggestions that are allowed to pass unchallenged into the right hemisphere, where they are accepted and acted upon directly. The result may involve an emotional reaction originating in the lower cerebral region, sensory motor responses requiring involvement of the cortex, and so on. Both the sensory and the motor cortex of the right cerebral portion of the brain contains a sequence of points known as the how do you even pronounce this word? Homunculus? Don't know what that word is either. Which corresponds to points in the body. See Exhibit 1, next page. Stimulation of the corresponding area on the cortex causes intermediate response in the associated portion of the body. Consequently, induction of the suggestion that in the left leg, it's a lot of reading. Suggestion that the left leg is numb if it reaches the right hemisphere unchallenged and is referred to the appropriate area of the sensory cortex, will result in an electrical reaction being generated that will induce the feeling of numbness. Similarly, the suggestion that the person experiencing a general feeling of happiness and well-being would be referred to the appropriate pleasure centers located in the lower cerebral portion of the cortex of the right hemisphere, thereby inducing the suggested feeling of euphoria. Finally, suggestions such as one that informs the hypnotic subject that enjoys enhanced concentrations or powers of memory would be responded to in the right hemisphere by accessing unused information storage capacity normally held in reserve as a result of left hemisphere selection and control processes. This aspect will become significant in the context of the gateway process when attention is given to the examining the way that hypnosis may be used to accelerate progress in the early stages of the gateway experience. Ooh, geez Louise. But fun stuff. Hypnosis. All right, third, transcendental meditation. On the other hand, transcendental meditation works in a distinctly different fashion. In this technique, intense and protracted single-minded concentration on the process of drawing energy up to the spinal cord ultimately results in what appears to be creation of acoustical standing waves in the cerebral ventricles, which are then conducted to the gray matter in the cerebral. Picture of a brain. Lots of pictures with brains. Nice. Tight. Cortex on the right side of the brain. As a result, according to Bentov, these waves will stimulate and eventually polarize the cortex in such a way that it will tend to conduct a single signal along the... Oh, it's that word again. Scientist, man. H-O-M. Not even going to pronounce this word, dude. Anyway, starting from the toes and up. The Bentov biomedical model, as described in a book by Lee Sanella, MD, entitled Kundalini, Psychosis or Transcendence, states that the standing acoustical waves are the result of the altered rhythm of the heart sounding, which are occasioned by the prolonged practice of meditation, and which set up a sympathetic vibration in the walls of the fluid-filled cavities which comprise the third and lateral ventricles of the brain. In addition, according to Bentov, the states of bliss described by those whose Kundalini symptoms have completed the full loop along the hemisphere may be explained as a self-stimulation of the pleasure centers in the brain caused by the circulation of a current along the sensory cortex. Bentov also notes that most of the described symptoms start on the left side of the body, means that it is mostly a development occurring in the right hemisphere. Although normally a period of meditation involving intense concentrations and practice for 5 years or some is required to bring up these Kundalini, Bentov states that the exposure to mechanical or acoustical vibrations in the range of 4 to 7 hertz, baby, 4 to 7 hertz, cycles per second for protracted periods may achieve the same effect. So sound vibrations may give you the same effect as Kundalini meditation. Interesting. Bent off sights, as an example, repeating riding in a car whose suspension and seat combination produce that range of vibration, or being exposed for long periods of time to these frequencies caused, for instance, by an air conditioning duct. He also notes that the cumulative effect of these vibrations may be able to trigger a spontaneous physio-kundalini sequence in susceptible people who have particularly sensitive nervous systems. What? Man. Very cool. Very cool. Number 4, biofeedback. The third consciousness altering methodology, which will be briefly described, is biofeedback. Excuse me. Biofeedback is somewhat unique in that it actually employs the self-cognitive powers of the left hemisphere to gain access to such areas of the right brain as the lower cerebral motor and sensory cortices, and assorted pain or pleasure centers, instead of suppressing the left hemisphere as is done in hypnosis, or largely bypassing and ignoring it as is done in transcendental meditation. Biofeedback teaches the left hemisphere first to visualize the desired result, and then to recognize the feelings associated with the experience of successful right hemisphere access to the specific lower cerebral cortex, pain or pleasure, or other areas in the manner needed to produce the desired result. Special self-monitoring devices such as the digital thermometer are used to inform the left brain when it succeeds in keying the right hemisphere into accessing the appropriate area. Once this is done, the left brain can then repeatedly instruct the right brain to reestablish the pathways involved so as to produce the same external objective measures of success. In this way, the pathways are strengthened and emphasized to such an extent that the left brain consciousness is enabled to access appropriate areas in the right brain using a conscious demand mode. For example, if the subject wishes to increase the circulation of the left leg in order to speed up healing, he may concentrate with his left brain on achieving that result while carefully monitoring the digital thermometer connected to the left leg. When the concentrated effort begins to achieve success, the digital thermometer will register an increase in the temperature of the left leg. At that point, the subject can mentally, left brain, associate the sensations experienced with the result achieved, and can begin to emphasize by memory recall. The same process to causes strengthening by affirmation and repetition. In this way, pain can be blocked, healing can be enhanced, malignant tumors can apparently be suppressed and ultimately destroyed. The body's pleasure centers can be stimulated, and a variety of specific psychological results may be achieved. In addition, biofeedback may be used to greatly accelerate achievements of deep meditative states, particularly for beginners who have no experience in meditative techniques and whose progress in that methodology is enhanced through effective visualization and external objective affirmations. Display of the subject's brainwave patterns on a cathode ray tube has proven to be laboratory validated means by which subjects may quickly learn to place themselves in profoundly relaxed states characterized by the sort of quietude and singularity of mental focus associated with advanced meditation. Man, a lot of information, but a lot of fun information. Gateway and Hemisink, baby. Gateway and Hemisink. Getting in there. Now that we have briefly profiled the basic mechanics of the principle, techniques for altering or expanding consciousness which share some of the objectives and or methods employed in the gateway experience, we may proceed to focus on what the technique actually involves. Fundamentally, the gateway experience is a training system designed to bring enhanced strength, focus, and coherence to the amplitude and frequency of brainwave output between the left and right hemispheres so as to alter consciousness, moving it outside the physical sphere so as to ultimately escape even the restrictions of time and space. The participants then gains access to the various levels of intuitive knowledge which the universe offers. Wow! What differentiates the gateway experience from forms of meditation is its use of the Hemisink Technique, which is defined in a monograph by Monroe Institute trainer Melissa Jagger as a state of consciousness defined when The EEG patterns of both hemispheres are simultaneously equal in amplitude and frequency. Although Hemisync seems to be rather rare and of only short duration in ordinary human consciousness, Melissa Jagger states that audio techniques developed by Bob Monroe can induce and sustain Hemisync within Institute's basic focus 3 tapes. Okay, so there's a basic focus 3 tapes. She also notes that studies conducted by Elmer and Alice Green at the Menninger Foundation have shown that a subject with 20 years of training in Zen meditation could consistently establish Hemisync at will, sustaining it for over 15 minutes. That's 15 minutes, baby. It only takes 20 years. Dr. Stuart Timlow, a psychiatrist and a research associate of the Monroe Institute, reports that in our studies of the effect of the Monroe tape system on brainwaves, we have found that the tapes encourage the focusing of brain energy. It can be measured as with a light bulb in watts into a narrower and narrower frequent band. This focusing of energy is not unlike the yoga concept of one-pointedness, which may translate in Western terms as a single-mindedness. Dr. Timlow goes on to observe that as the individual gets into the tapes beyond focus number 3, there is a gradual increase in brainwave size, which is a measure of brain energy or power. Yikes, dude. So you just take a tape, get up a level. Take a tape. Oh, Zen City. Number 6, lamp versus laser. Melissa Jagger used the metaphor to help clarify the process involved in the use of Hemisync in the gateway experience. She points out that the human mind in its natural state may be likened to an ordinary lamp, which expands energy in the form of both heat and light, but in a chaotic, incoherent way which diffuses its energy over a wide area of rather limited depth. On the other hand, the human mind under the discipline of Hemisync acts after the fashion of a laser beam, which produces a disciplined stream of light. So you focus, the stream of energy is projected with total coherence of both frequency and amplitude, such that the surface area of a laser beam contains billions of times the concentrated energy found on a similar surface area on the sun. Gateway assumes that once the frequency and amplitude of the human brain are rendered coherent, it is possible to begin accelerating both, so that the human mind is soon resonating at even higher vibrational levels. The mind can then bring itself into synchronization with more sophisticated and rarefied energy levels in the universe. The mind, when operating at these increasingly rarefied levels, is assumed to be capable of processing the information, thus receiving through the same fundamental matrix by which it makes sense of ordinary physical sensory input to achieve meaning in a cognitive context. Such meaning is usually perceived visually in the form of symbols, but may also be perceived as astonishing flashes of holistic intuition, or even in the form of scenarios involving both visual and aerial perception. The mechanics by which the mind exercises the consciousness function will be addressed in more detail in the latter portion of this paper. Okay. Number 7. Man. Frequency following response. To achieve synchronization of brain hemispheres, the Hemisink technique takes advantage of a phenomenon known as the frequency following response, FFR, which means that if a subject hears a sound produced at a frequency which emulates one of those associated with the operation of the human brain, the brain will try to mimic the same frequency pattern by adjusting its brain wave output. Therefore, if the subject is in a fully awake state but hears sound frequencies which approximates brainwave output at the theta level, the subject's brain will endeavor to alter its brainwave pattern from the normal beta to the theta level. Maybe it's that theta level. You want to get on that theta. Since that theta level is associated with sleep, the subject concerned may progress from a fully awake to a sleep state, provided that he does not consciously resist as the brain strives to entrain its wave frequency output with the one which the person hears. Since these brainwave frequencies are outside the spectrum of sound which can be heard in pure form or by the human ear, Hemisync must produce them based on an another phenomenon known as the brain's capacity for deducing beat frequencies, baby. If the human brain is exposed to one frequency in the left ear, which is 10 hertz below another audible frequency played in the right ear, rather than hearing either of the two audible frequencies, the brain chooses to hear the difference between them, the beat frequency, thus availing itself of the FFR phenomenon using the technique of the beat frequencies. The gateway system uses Hemisync and other audio techniques employing the FFR phenomenon to introduce a variety of frequencies which are played at a virtually subliminal, marginally audible level. The objective is to relax the left hemisphere of the brain, place the physical body in a virtual sleep state, and bring the left and right hemisphere into coherence under conditions designed to promote the production of ever higher amplitude and frequency of brainwave output. Audible and perhaps subliminal suggestions by Bob Monroe accompany the various brainwave frequencies, which are sometimes rolled in together with other sounds such as sea surf to mask the sound of frequencies where desirable. In this way, Gateway endeavors to provide the subject with the tools by which he may alter his consciousness based on his own violation over the time through the repetitive use of the tapes so as to access via intuitive means new categories of information not available to ordinary consciousness. My mind's a little bit blown away right now, but hope yours are too. Very cool. And again, you take it for what it is, right? Number 8, role of resonance. However, brain coherence through entertainment to beat frequencies introduced via stereo headphones is only part of the reason why the gateway system works. It is also designed to achieve the physical quietude characteristics of deep transcendental meditative states, which brings about a complete alteration of the fundamental resonance pattern associated with the sound frequencies produced by the human body. Yoga, Zen, or transcendental meditation, if practiced long enough, will produce a change in the sound frequency with which the human heart resonates throughout the entire body. According to Bentov, this change in resonance results from an elimination of what the medical profession calls the bifurcation echoes, so that the sound of the heartbeat can move synchronously up and down the circulatory system in harmonious resonance approximately 7 times a second. Bentov describes the role played by the bifurcation echo as follows. When the left ventricle of the heart ejects blood, the aorta, being elastic, balloons out just beyond the valve and causes a pressure pulse to travel down along the aorta. Aorta. When the pressure pulse reaches the bifurcation in the lower abdomen, which is where the aorta forks in to go into the legs, part of the pressure pulse rebounds and starts traveling up the aorta. If in the meantime the heart ejects more blood and a new pressure pulse is traveling down, these two pressure points will eventually collide somewhere along the aorta and produce an interference pattern. By placing the body in a sleep-like state, the gateway tapes achieve the same goal as meditation, in that it places the body in such profoundly relaxed state that the bifurcation echo slowly fades away as the heart lessens the force and frequency with which it pushes blood into the aorta. The result is a regular, rhythmic sine wave pattern of sound which echoes throughout the body and rises up into the head in sustained resonance. The amplitude of this sine wave pattern, when measured with a sensitive seismograph type instrument, is about 3 times the average of the sound volume produced by the heart when it is operating normally. Geez Louise, so you can kind of go into Zen state using these tapes, which, hey, do it up if you got some. Talking about the tapes, baby. Number 9, brain stimulation. Bentov's biomedical model shows that this resonance is of considerable importance since it is directly transmitted to and impacts upon the brain. The resulting vibration is received and transmitted into the brain itself via the full fluid-filled third and left ventricles located above the brainstem. An electromagnetic pulse is then generated, which stimulates the brain to raise the amplitude and frequency of the brain output, just as Dr. Tim Low observed in his research on the effects of the Hemisink tapes. Also, the brain is contained in a tight membrane called the dura, which is in turn cushioned by a thin layer of fluid located between it and the skull. As the coherent resonance produced by the human heart in a state of profound relaxation reaches the fluid layer surrounding the brain, it sets up a rhythmic pattern in which the brain moves up and down approximately 0.005 to 0.010 millimeters in a continuous pattern. The self-reinforcing character of resonant behavior accounts for the body's ability to sustain this movement despite the minimal level of energy involved. In this way, the entire body, based on its own micromotion, functions as a tuned vibrational system which transfers energy in a range of between 6.8 and 7.5 hertz into the Earth's ionospheric cavity, which itself resonates at about 7 to 7.5 hertz. Of this process, Bentoff states, this is occurring at a very long wavelength of about 40,000 kilometers, or just about the perimeter of the planet. In other words, the signal from the movement of our bodies will travel around the world in about 1/7 of a second through the electrostatic field in which we are embedded. Such a long wavelength knows no obstacles, and its strength does not attenuate much over large distances. Naturally, it will go through just about anything: metal, concrete, water, and the field making up our bodies. It is the ideal medium for conveying a telepathic signal. And telepathy is pretty fucking dope, right? Consequently, the gateway process is designed to rather rapidly induce a state of profound calm within the nervous system and to significantly lower blood pressure, to cause the circulatory system, skeleton, and all other physical organ systems to begin vibrating coherently at approximately 7 to 7.5 cycles per second. The resulting resonance sets up a regular repetitive sound wave which propagates in consonance with the electrostatic field of the Earth. Wow. Holy moly. A lot of potential there. Maybe before Neuralink comes along, we can get telepathic, baby. I've been talking about this for some time. Can we get some experts out there if they're like legit, like if there's anybody out there like doing legit like telepathy, doing any sort of like research on remote viewing, anything related to, the metaphysical, doing things with your mind? Can somebody shine a little bit of a, brighter light on this few subjects that are very interesting, man? I mean, let's keep reading. Number 10, energy entertainment. Energy entertainment, that's what we're all about, baby. Energy entertainment. Aren't you tired of reading about like the Shrona and this? Read about something fun. Who gives a fuck about who wore what at the other fashion show, who didn't show up wearing what with who didn't hold hands, and like who broke up with? Fuck that shit. Read something interesting every once in a while. That's what we're doing out here. Number 10, energy entertainment, baby. Let's do it. As the body is turned into a coherent oscillator vibrating in harmony with the surrounding electrostatic medium, the specific exercises, including the gateway types, enjoin the participant to build up the energy field surrounding his body, presumably by using energy from the Earth's field, which the body is now entertaining because of its ability to resonate with it. This puts the body's energy field into homogeneity with its surrounding environment and promotes movement of the seat of consciousness into the surrounding environment, partly in response to the fact that the two electromagnetic mediums are now a single energy continuum. Thus, the same process which moves the brain into a focused coherence at steadily higher levels of frequency and amplitude so as to entertain analogous frequencies in the universe for data collection also promotes enhancement of bodily energy levels to a point adequate to permit the subject to experience an out-of-body movement when he is ready to do so. Out-of-body movement, baby. More will be said about this topic later. Oh, fuck yeah, I'm interested. In addition, by resonating with the Earth's electromagnetic sphere, the human body creates a surprisingly powerful carrier wave to assist the mind in communication activity with other human minds similarly tuned. Bro, talk about getting on the same vibrations, bro. Everybody's always like, yeah, let's really vibe together, motherfuckers. Let's do it. Telepathy. Consciousness and energy. Yo, that's fucking dope, bro. Imagine like actually being able to communicate with somebody across the other side of the fucking world just using, if it's possible, bro. I'm pretty sure like low key levels are definitely possible. You've seen it in mothers and babies, you know, instincts going about, but you know, let's get the men in black involved, let's get Papa involved, let's get people involved and talk about it. Number 11, consciousness and energy. Before our explanation can proceed any further, it is essential to define the, by the way, this is probably going to be one of the longest podcasts and if at any point the video should stop due to, you know, memory or battery or this, and we will pick it up again sometime during the week, and this week we're breaking boundaries and our honey buns. But nonetheless, we will finish this article. Okay, we've read 10 pages out of the 29 pages. We're going to keep reading. It's entertaining as fuck, bro. Let's read together. Okay, consciousness and energy. All right. Before our explanation can proceed any further, it is essential to define the mechanism by which the human mind exercises the function known as consciousness, and to describe the way in which that consciousness operates to deduce meaning from the stimuli which it receives. To do this, we will first consider the fundamental character of the material world in which we have our physical existence in order to accurately perceive the raw stuff with which our consciousness must work. The first point which needs to be made is that the two terms matter and energy tend to be misleading if taken to indicate two distinctly different states of existence in the physical world that we know it. Excuse me. Indeed, if the term matter is taken to mean solid substance as opposed to energy, which is understood to mean a force of some sort, then the use of the former is entirely misleading. Science now knows that both the electrons which spin in the energy field located around the nucleus of the atom and the nucleus itself are made up of nothing more than oscillating energy grids. Solid matter in the strict construction of the term simply does not exist. Rather, atomic structure is composed of oscillating energy grids surrounding by other oscillating energy grids which orbit at extraordinarily high speeds. In his book Stalking the Wild Pendulum, Isaac Bentop gives the following figures. The energy grid which composes the nucleus of the atom vibrates at approximately 10 to the power of 22 hertz, which means 10 followed by 22 zeros. At 70 degrees Fahrenheit, an atom oscillates at the speed of 10 to the power of 15 hertz. An entire molecule composed of a number of atoms bound together in a single energy field vibrates in the range of 10 to the power of 9 hertz. A live human cell vibrates at approximately 10 to the power of 3 hertz. The point to be made is that the entire human being, brain, consciousness, and all is, like the universe which surrounds him, nothing more or less than an extraordinarily complex system of energy fields. We're all energy, baby. The so-called states of matter are actually variants in the state of energy, and human consciousness is the function of the interaction of energy in the two opposite states, motion versus rest, in a manner described in the following paragraph. Number 12, holograms. Talking about Tupac, talking about... Do we have any other holograms? He's the most famous one that I can recall. Talk about holograms. You and I are essentially holograms, baby. Energy creates, stores, and retrieves meaning in the universe by projecting or expanding at certain frequencies in a three-dimensional mode that creates a living pattern called a hologram. The concept of the hologram can be most easily understood by using an example cited by Bentov in which he asks the reader to visualize a bowl full of water into which 3 pebbles are dropped. As the ripples created by the simultaneous entry of the 3 pebbles radiate outward towards the rim of the bowl, Bentov further asks the reader to visualize that the surface of the water is suddenly frozen so that the ripple pattern is preserved instantly. Okay? The ice is removed, leaving the 3 pebbles still laying at the bottom of the bowl. Then the ice is exposed to a powerful coherent source of light, such as a laser. The result will be a 3-dimensional mode or representation of the position of the 3 pebbles suspended in midair. Holograms are capable of encoding so much detail that, for example, it is possible to take a holographic projection of a glass of swamp water and view it under magnification to see small organisms not visible to the naked eye when the glass of water itself is examined. The whole concept of holography, despite its scientific implications, has only been known to the physicists since the underlying mathematical principles were worked out by Dennis Gabor in 1947. He later won a Nobel Prize for his work. You know Dennis and his Nobel Prizes, baby. Laboratory demonstrations of Gabor's work only occurred years later following invention of the laser. Oh shit. Lasers. As biologist Lyle Watson explains, the purest kind of light available to us is that produced by a laser, which sends out a beam in which all the waves are of one frequency, like those made by an ideal pebble and a perfect pond. When two laser beams touch, they produce an interference pattern of light and dark ripples that can be recorded on a photographic plate. And if one of the beams, instead of coming directly from the laser, is reflected first of an object such as a human face, the resulting pattern will be very complex indeed, but it can still be recorded. The record will be a hologram of the face. Get it. Done. Do it. Number 13. The part encodes the whole. The part encodes the whole. We're all part of the one. The one is part of the all. All is one, one is all. Of further importance is the fact that even if we dropped our frozen hologram of the ripple pattern on the floor and broke it into a number of pieces, each individual piece would recreate the entire holographic image all by itself. The smaller the piece, the fuzzier and more distorted would be the resulting holographic projection, but the fact remains that a whole projection would nonetheless be made. The key to creating any hologram is that energy is The key to creating any hologram is that energy in motion must interact with energy in a state of rest, non-motion. In the foregoing example, the pebbles represent energy in motion, while the water before its agitation by the pebbles represents energy at a state of rest. To activate or in effect to perceive the meaning of a holograph energy, in this case a coherent light source such as a laser beam, must be passed through the interference pattern generated by the interaction between the moving energy and the energy at rest. In the simple example given by Bentov, this requirement was fulfilled by holding the frozen interference pattern in front of the coherent light to project the three-dimensional holographic image, its meaning, into space. As Marilyn Ferguson, editor of the Brain/Mind Bulletin, tells us, another feature of a hologram is its efficiency. Billions of bits or information can be restored in a tiny space. The pattern of the holographic photograph is stored everywhere on the plate. Fascinating. Numero 14, baby, the consciousness matrix. What are we talking about? Talking about the matrix. Ah, gosh, darn, come on. Again. Second time, bruh. God. Ow. Oh, hold me back, bro. Hold me back before I get into it. Consciousness of the matrix. Matrix, the movie, the concept. We're in it. Watch yourself. Number 14. Consciousness matrix. The universe is composed of interacting energy fields, some at rest and some in motion. It is, and of itself, one gigantic hologram of unbelievable complexity. According to the theories of Carl Pribram, a neuroscientist at Stanford University, and David Bohm, a physicist at the University of London, the human mind is also a hologram which attunes itself to the universal hologram by the medium of energy exchange, thereby deducing meaning and achieving the state which we call consciousness. With respect to the states of expanded or altered consciousness such as gateway uses, the process operates in the following way. As energy passes through the various aspects of the universal hologram and is perceived by the electrostatic fields which comprise the human mind, the holograph images being conveyed are projected upon these electronic fields of the mind and are perceived or understood to the extent that the electrostatic field is operating at a frequency and amplitude that can harmonize with and therefore read the energy carrier wave pattern passing through it. Changes in the frequency and amplitude of the electrostatic field, which comprises the human mind, determines the configuration and hence the character of the holographic energy matrix which the mind projects to intercept meaning directly from the holographic transmissions of the universe. We're all transmissions, baby. Those holographic transmissions. Then, to make sense of what the holographic images are saying to it, the mind proceeds to compare the image just received with itself. Specifically, it does this by comparing the image received with that part of its own hologram, which constitutes memory, by registering differences in geometric form and in energy frequency. The consciousness perceives, see exhibit number 2, next page, as psychologist Keith Floyd puts it, contrary to what everyone knows, so it may not be the brain that produces consciousness, but rather consciousness that creates the appearance of the brain. What? My brain's melting. Or is it all a hologram? Number 15, brain in a phase, baby. Brain in a phase. Brain in a phase. I keep hitting myself. Brain and stop hitting yourself. Brain. Yo, told you we're gonna stay lit, baby. Get lit. Have fun. Brain in phase. The consciousness process is most easily envisaged if we picture the holographic input with a three-dimensional grid system superimposed over it, such that all of the energy patterns contained within can be described in terms of three-dimensional geometry using mathematics to reduce the data to two-dimensional form. Mantov states that the scientists suspect that the human mind operates on a simple binary go, no-go system, as do all digital computers. Therefore, once it superimposes a three-dimensional matrix over holographic information it wishes to interpret and reduces that information mathematically to two-dimensional form, it can completely process it using the fundamental binary system, just as any computer made by the hand of man can process volumes of data and make various comparisons between the data and information stored in its digital memory. Our minds operate on the same way, perceiving by comparison only. Bantov states that the proposition this way: our whole reality is constructed by constantly making such comparisons. Whenever we perceive something, we always perceive differences only. In states of expanded consciousness, the right hemisphere of the human brain, in its holistic, nonlinear, nonverbal mode of functioning, acts as the primary matrix of receptor for this holographic input, while by operating in phase or coherence with the right brain, the left hemisphere provides the secondary matrix through its binary, computer-like method of functioning to screen further the data by comparison and reduce it to the discrete two-dimensional form. Holy smokes. Number 16, evaluation. To the extent that Gateway succeeds in bringing about a refinement and energy matrix of the mind, it succeeds in expanding and altering human consciousness so that it can perceive without recourse to the intercession of the physical senses, such that evermore the universal hologram, not of course accessible by sense perception, can ultimately be perceived and understood. Marilyn Ferguson has written that the theories of Pybrem and Bohm appear to account for all transcendental experiences, paranormal events, and even normal perceptual oddities. She goes on to say of Pybrem, currently he is proposing a startling, all-encompassing model that is generating considerable excitement among those intrigued by the mysteries of human consciousness. His holographic model marries brain research to theoretical physics. It accounts for normal perception and simultaneously takes the paranormal and transcendental experience out of the supernatural by explaining them as a part of nature. Like certain strange discoveries of quantum physics, the radical reorientation of this theory suddenly makes sense of paradoxical sayings of mystics throughout the ages. Man, oh man. Self-cognition. 17. To complete our outline of these processes by which the mind achieves and exercises consciousness, we must also describe the mechanism by which accounts for the aspect of human thought and differentiates it from the consciousness of plants or animals, i.e. self-cognition. Humans not only know, but they know that they know. They're able to monitor the process of their own thinking and maintain an awareness of it. Moreover, they can conduct a comparative. There's a chart. Beautiful brain assessment, evaluating the functioning of their thought process against various objective standards that they have adopted. Human consciousness can do this because, some of the words are cut off right at the beginning of the sentences. Human consciousness can do this because it has the capacity to duplicate aspects of its own hologram project them out, perceive that projection, put it through comparison with the memory aspect where its evaluation standards of measure are stored of its own hologram, and measure or sense the differences using three-dimensional geometry, and then binary go, no-go pulse to yield verbal cognition about the self. Excuse me. This is very interesting stuff, you guys. Yeah, guys and gals. Guys and gals. Ladies and gentlemen, this is fascinating. Number 18, time, space, dimension. Up to this point, our discussion of the gateway process has been relatively simple and easy to follow. Now the fun begins. Gateway involves, now the fun begins. Yeah. Gateway involves more than just perception of those aspects of the universal hologram which can be accessed in the dimension of the time-space as we know it, to explain how and why human consciousness can be brought to transcend the limitations. Sorry guys, bear with me a few seconds. Just gotta make it a little bit larger. There we go. To explain how and why human consciousness can be brought to transcend the limitations of time-space is the next task which must be addressed. To do this, we must first appreciate that time and space are in order to understand. To do this, we must first appreciate what time and space are in order to understand how the dimension that they constitute can be transcended. Physicists define time as a measurement of energy or force in motion. In other words, it is a measurement of change. However, in order for energy to be in motion, it must first be limited in some way within the confines of some sort of vibratory pattern, so that its confinement gives it the capacity for being contained at a specific location which is distinguishable from other locations, space. Energy, which is not confined, is force without limit, without dimension, without the limits of form. It is infinity, cannot move because there is nothing beyond infinity, and is therefore outside of the dimension of time. It is also beyond space because the concept implies that a specific energy form is limited to a specific location, is absent from other locations. But if energy is in the state of infinity, there are no boundaries, no here, no differentiation from there, no sense of area. Energy in infinity means energy uniformly extended without limit. It has no beginning, no end, no location. It is conscious force, the fundamental primal power of existence without form, a state of infinite being. Energy in infinity is said to be completely at rest and therefore cannot generate hologram souls so long as it remains utterly inactive. It retains its inherent capacity for consciousness in that it can receive and passively perceive holograms generated by the energy in motion out in the various dimensions which make up the created universe, but it cannot be perceived by consciousness operating in the active universe. Energy in this state of inactive infinity is termed by the physicists as energy in the absolute state, or simply the absolute. Between the absolute and the material universe in which we experience our physical existence are various intervening dimensions to which human consciousness in altered states of being may gain access. Theoretically, human consciousness may continue to expand the horizons of its perceptual capability until it reaches the dimension of the absolute, at which point perception stops because the absolute generates no holograms of or about itself. Jeez Louise. Interesting. Number 19, intervening dimensions. Since the absolute is conscious energy in infinity, i.e. without boundaries, it occupies every dimension to include time-space dimension in which we have our physical existence, but we cannot perceive it. It overlays everything, as do many of the intervening guardians or dimensions through which the energies of the universe pass on their way to and from their home in the state of infinity, the absolute. To enter these intervening dimensions, human consciousness must focus with such intense coherence that the frequency of the energy pattern which comprises that consciousness, i.e. the brainwave output, can accelerate to the point where the resulting frequency pattern, if displayed on an oscilloscope? Sorry about that. Would look virtually like a solid line. Achievement of this state of altered consciousness sets the stage for a perception of non-time-space dimensions because of the operation of a principle in physics known as Planck's distance. This is an aspect of quantum mechanics which applies to the fact that any oscillating frequency such as brainwave reaches 2 points of complete rest, which constitute the boundaries of which individual oscillation, movement up or down. Without these points of rest, an oscillating wave pattern would be impossible, since the points of rest are required to permit the energy to change direction and thus continue vibrating between rigid limits. But it is also true that when, for an infinitesimally, God, how do you pronounce some of these words? For an infinitely brief instant, brief instant, that energy reaches one of its 2 points of rest. It clicks out of time and space and joins infinitely. See exhibit number 3, next page. That critical step out of the time-space occurs when the speed of the oscillating drops below 10 to the power of 33 centimeters per second, Planck's distance. To use the words of Bentov, quantum mechanics tells us that when distances go below Planck's distance, which is 10 to the power of 33 centimeters, we enter in effect a new world. To return to our case in point, the human consciousness wave pattern reaches such high frequency that the pattern of clickouts comes so close together that there is virtual continuity in it. Then a portion of that consciousness is actually postulated to establish and maintain its information collection function in those dimensions located between time, space, and the absolute. Thus, as the almost continuous click-out pattern establishes itself in continuous phase at speeds below Planck's distance, but before reaching the state of total rest, human consciousness passes through the looking glass of time-space after the fashion of Alice beginning her journey into Wonderland. The gateway experience with its associated Hemisink technique is apparently designed, if used systematically and patiently, to enable human consciousness to establish a coherent pattern of perception in those dimensions where speeds below Planck's distance apply. This holds true irrespective of whether the individual is exercising his consciousness while in his physical body, or whether he is doing so after having separated that consciousness from the physical body, i.e. the so-called out-of-body state mentioned earlier. Wow. Holy guacamole. My goodness. Let's keep going, baby. Let's keep going. Number 20. Subatomic particles. The behavior of subatomic... Let me see. Hold on a sec. Let's do this. Number 20. Subatomic particles. The behavior of subatomic particles provides an interesting example of the phenomena of clicking out, discussed in the preceding paragraphs. In an article prepared for Scientific Digest magazine, Dr. John Gildman mentions the way in which subatomic particles communicate with each other once their energy fields become entrained as a result of colliding with each other. Communication concerned is, of course, postulated to be occurring during the click out of phase in the oscillation of the energy fields comprising the subatomic particles concerned. It is this cause which accounts for the cross communication at what in terms of time and space velocities would seem to involve speeds in excess of light. In reality, Einstein's theory of relativity is not being invalidated, but rather the communication concerned is taking place outside the dimension of time-space to which the theory of relativity is strictly confined. Specifically, Dr. Gildman tells us quantum theory postulates a kind of long-range Siamese twin effect whenever two subatomic particles collide and then go their different ways. Even when the particles are halfway across the universe from each other, it says they instantaneously respond to each other's actions, and in doing so, they violate relativity. Relativity's ban on faster than light velocities. Indeed, regarding attempts to quantify what is known about the behavior of energy as dimensions apparently outside of time and space, Bantoff speaks about courageous physicists who are working on hypothetical particles called tachyons. Scientists, y'all are crazy, which can move at speeds higher than light. The speed of tachyons, gosh, starts just above the speed of light and ranges all the way to infinite velocities. Number 21, dimensions in between. Now that we've postulated the legitimacy of the assertion that the energy forms which compose consciousness can move beyond the time-space dimension, we need to turn our attention to the energy form which inhibit those dimensions between time and space and the absolute. In doing so, we may better perceive the form that reality assumes when we encounter it in those intermediate dimensions. In this context, Bantoff tells us that the causal relationship between events breaks down. Movements become jerky rather than smooth. Time and space may become grainy or chunky. You're chunky, baby. Perhaps a piece of space can be traversed by a particle of matter in any direction without necessarily being synchronized with a piece of time. In short, a pair of events will occur in either time or space, their pair not being connected causally, but by a random fluctuation. What Bantoff means is that inside the dimension of time and space, where both concepts apply in a generally uniform way, there is a proportional relationship between them. Certain space can be covered by energy moving in either particle or waveform in certain time, assuming a specific velocity virtually anywhere in the time-space universe. The relationship is neat and predictable. However, in the intermediate dimensions beyond time and space, the limitations imposed on energy to put it into a state of oscillating motion are not uniform as they are in a physical universe. A myriad of various distortions and incongruent, I can't say that word for now, are thus likely to be encountered, such that our neat assumptions concerning the relationship between time and space as we know it in this dimension do not apply. But even more important, access is open to both the past and the future when the dimension of current time-space is left behind. Number 22, special status out-of-body experiences. Oh, this is where it gets exciting. Although human consciousness can, with enough practice, move beyond the dimension of time and space and interfere with other energy systems in other dimensions, the entire process is appreciably enhanced if that consciousness can be detached in large measures from the physical body before such interface is attempted. Once an individual becomes proficient in the technique of out-of-body movement and then reaches the point where he is able to break out of the time-space while out of his body, he gains the advantage of clicking out part of his enhanced consciousness while starting from a base located much closer to the dimensions with which he wishes to communicate with. In other words, since he is starting from a point much higher up, to use an analogy from the time-space context, that part of his consciousness involved in clicking out will have that much more time to interact in dimensions beyond time-space, because less time is required to traverse in the intervening layers. Moreover, once the individual is able to project his consciousness beyond time-space, that consciousness would logically tend to entertain its frequency output with the new energy environment to which it's exposed, therein greatly enhancing the extent to which the individual's altered consciousness may be further modified to achieve a much heightened point of focus and a much refined oscillating pattern. As a result, a self-reinforcing process should ensue whereby the further consciousness in the out-of-body state can be projected beyond the time-space dimension. the more its level of energy output would be enhanced, thus promoting the potential for still further travel. The tentative conclusion to be drawn is that the out-of-body state may be regarded as an extremely effective way of accelerating the process of enhancing consciousness and of interfacing with dimensions beyond time and space. If the practitioner of the gateway technique has a choice of concentrating on achieving and exploiting the out-of-body experience as opposed to concentrating his full efforts on expanding his consciousness exclusively from a physical base, the former would appear to promise much faster and more impressive success than does the latter. Ooh, it's a lot of reading. Almost there. But that's a lot of fun. I mean, is this a way to start sometime you want to, you're like, man, I got this wicked piece of equipment that crashed on the earth and I don't know how to back engineer that shit. Start zenning, baby. Start zenning for 20 minutes. Ask questions, put it out into the airwaves. You're like, we got this thing that's just like, come on. This time wasn't that bad, but still, watch yourself. Yeah. We want to go supersonic or hypersonic right now. We want to go hypersonic, get to that next level, because that's like, if you got hypersonic equipment, there's no way anybody can defend against it. You want to go hypersonic, you also want to start moving without propelling, dude. Because propelling's so 2020, bro. Propelling is like 2020 tech. We want to go without propelling, we want to go hypersonic. Maybe some sort of, I don't know. Out-of-body experiences are the way to go. I'm just saying, maybe. Number 23, absolute in perspective. It may be helpful at this point to pause and recap. Let's. The major aspects of our intellectual journey from time-space to the realm of the absolute. We have spoken at some length concerning the incredibly complex hologram which is created by the intersection of energy patterns generated by the totality of all dimensions of the universe, time, space included. We've noted that our minds constitute energy fields which interact with various aspects of this hologram to deduce information which is ultimately processed through the left hemisphere of our brains to reduce it to a form that we employ for the process we call thinking. We have implied that this hologram is the finite embodiment and active energy form of the infinite consciousness of the absolute. It is the title we assign to that vast pool of energy in a state of perfect rest over which the physical universe is layered, and from whence it comes. Incidentally, to describe this, Bentov uses the analogy of a very deep sea, comparing the still depths of the sea to the dimension of the absolute, while assigning the storm-tossed waves above to represent the physical universe with which we are familiar. The slightly agitated currents of the sea to be found in between the turbulent surface and the totally still depths represent energy in the process of either going into rest, i.e. approaching infinity, or coming out of rest. Okay, trying to keep everything intact. Number 24. From Big Bang to Taurus. Working from the widely accepted Big Bang theory, Bentov represents a conceptual model to depict the process of time-space evolution, the relative position of the universal hologram. The hologram is often called a torus because it is thought to have an overall shape of an immense, self-contained spiral. Basing, everything's about that spiral again. Basing his thesis on recent studies concerning the distribution of quasars, quasi-stellar objects. Quasar, you a quasar, bro. You're a quasar, dog. And operating on the premise that in the universe, smaller processes tend to be mirror images of larger ones, i.e. the patterns of electrons around the nucleus of an atom mirrors the way planets orbit their suns, and so on. Bentov postulates the following scenario. Taking his cue from the observed capability of quasars to eject enormously concentrated beams of matter from their interiors into a controlled non-concentric version of the Big Bang, he similar process occurring in the generation of the universe, noting that those galaxies located to the north of our own galaxy are moving away faster than those located to the south, and that those to the east and west are demonstrably more distant. Bentov regarded this as substantive evidence that the jet of a matter which expanded into our universe has turned back upon itself, eventually forming an ovoid or egg shape. He sees matter in our universe entering the ovoid pattern following ejection from a nucleus composed of extremely compressed energy through a white hole. At the end of its trip to the far end of the ovoid, he sees it's departing via black hole. White hole, black hole, baby. In such a model, time is observed to be a measure of the change which occurs as energy evolves into new, more complex forms as it progresses along the distance from the white hole side of the nucleus around the shell of this cosmic egg until it enters the black hole. In other words, as energy expelled from infinity and confined within limits by the conscious of the absolute achieves form and motion following ejection from the white hole at the top of the egg, time begins as a measure of the cadence of this evolutionary movement as a reality goes around the shells of the egg on its journey to the black hole at the far end. What the fuck? What the fuck? Okay, let's go. Number 25. Our place in time. Our place in time, bruh. The observed distribution of galaxies suggests that our particular universe is located near the top of the egg, at the point where matter begins to fall back on itself, thus explaining the reason why the galaxies to the north are seen to be moving away rapidly as they are caught up in the downturn of the stream of matter towards the far end of the cosmic egg. Layered over this cosmic egg is the absolute, which sustains the radiating nucleus from which the original jet of matter issued forth. As the stream of matter moves around the ovoid towards its distinction at the black hole, where it will be reabsorbed into the radiating nucleus and then the absolute. It generates the interference pattern within the cosmic egg, which constitutes the universal hologram or torus. Since the torus is being simultaneously generated by matter in all the various phases of time, it reflects the development of the universe in the past, present, and future as it would be seen from a particular perspective in the phase of time. By reflecting on this model, it becomes possible to see how human consciousness brought to a sufficiently altered focus state could obtain information concerning the past, present, and future, since they all exist in the universal hologram simultaneously in the case of the future, because all of the consequences of the past and present can be seen coming together in the hologram, such that the future can be predicted or seen with total accuracy. Moreover, it is possible to see how the implosion of energy patterns would cross and recross to create an incredibly complex four-dimensional hologram or torus in spiral shape, in reflection of a multi-dimensional developing pattern of evolution. All of the movements of the energies which comprise the universe leave their mark and hence tell their story throughout time. Holy smokes, where is it all going? It's spiraling. Past, present, and future, isn't it? But it's a wonderful ride. Giddy up, baby. Quality of consciousness. That's right, quality of consciousness. We noted earlier that the out-of-body state involves projection of a major portion of the energy pattern that represents human consciousness so that it may move either freely throughout the terrestrial sphere for purpose of information acquisition or into other dimensions outside the time-space, perhaps to interact with other forms of consciousness within the universe. Consciousness is the organization and sustaining principle that provides the impetus and guides to bring and keep energy in motion within a given set of parameters so that the specific reality will result. When consciousness reaches a state of sophistication in which it can perceive itself, its own hologram, it reaches the point of self-cognition. Human beings have this form of elevated consciousness, as does the absolute, but in case of the latter, it is a function of energy and its associated quality of consciousness in infinity, omniscience, and omnipotence, and perceptual unity. When energy returns to a state of total rest within the absolute, it returns to the continuum of consciousness in the pool of limitless, timeless perception that resides there. Thus, the more complex an energy system in the material state, the more consciousness it possesses to maintain its reality. Our consciousness, therefore, is that differentiated aspect of the universal consciousness which resides within the absolute. It accounts for the organization of the energy patterns which constitute our physical body, but is distinctly separate from and superior to it. Since consciousness exists quite apart from and outside of reality, beyond the bounds of time and space, it, like the absolute, has neither beginning nor end. Reality has both the beginning and an end because it is bound within time and space, but the fundamental quantum of energy and its associated consciousness is eternal. When reality ends, its constituent energy simply returns to infinity in the absolute. Holy smokes. All right. Number 27. Consciousness in perspective. All right. Having ascertained that human consciousness is able to separate from physical reality and interact with other intelligences in other dimensions within the universe, and that it is both eternal and destined for ultimate return to the absolute, so we are faced with the question, so what happens then? Since memory is a function of consciousness and therefore enjoys the same eternal character as the consciousness which accounts for its existence, it must be admitted that when consciousness returns to the absolute, it brings with it all the memories it has accumulated through experience in reality. The return of consciousness to the absolute does not imply an extinction of the separate entity which the consciousness organizes and sustained. In reality, rather, it suggests a differentiated consciousness which merges with and participates in the universal consciousness and infinity of the absolute without losing the separate identity and accumulated self-knowledge which its memories confer upon it. What it does lose is the capability for generation of independent thought holograms, since that can be done only by energy and motion. In other words, it retains the power to perceive but loses the power of will or choice. Interesting. In exchange, however, this consciousness participates in the all-knowing infinite continuum of consciousness, which is a characteristic of energy in the ever-present. Consequently, it is accurate to observe that when a person experiences the out-of-body state, he is in fact projecting the eternal spark of consciousness and memory, which constitutes the ultimate source of his identity, to let it play and learn from dimensions both inside and outside the time-space world in which his physical component currently enjoys a short period of virality. Holy smokes. It is really cool. Gateway method. Number 28. Number 28, gateway method. Having put the gateway experience in context by postulating a structural outline of how and why it seems to work, and having shown that it is designed to achieve the time, has come to examine the specific techniques which comprise the gateway training process. These techniques are designed to enable the user of the gateway tapes to manipulate the high energy states, which can be achieved if the user continues to work with the tapes over a period of time. The amount of time required to reach advanced energy states and to fully exploit the techniques varies with individuals. The sensitivity of his nervous system, his general state of mind, and the extent to which he may have previously developed facility in related techniques such as transcendental meditation are all pertinent factors affecting the speed at which he may expect to progress. The gateway process begins by teaching the individual participant to isolate extraneous concerns in a visualization device called an energy conversion box. Next, the participant is introduced to a method of encouraging his mind and body to strive to achieve a state of resonance through utterance of a single tone, a monotonous, protracted humming sound that sets up a feeling of vibration, particularly in the head. Namaste, baby. Zen city all day, every day. He engages in this resonant tuning, as it is called, by humming along with a chorus of such sounds that are continued on the gateway tape. Following this, the participant is exposed to the gateway affirmation and is encouraged to repeat it to himself as he hears it repeated on the tape. This affirmation is a statement to the effect that the individual realizes that he is more than merely a physical body and that he deeply desires to expand his consciousness. Power of the mind, baby. Number 29, Hemisink introduction. Hemisink introduced. Introduced at Hemisink, baby. After that, he is exposed for the first time to the Hemisink sound frequencies and is encouraged to focus on and develop a perception of and appreciation for those feelings which accompany the synchronization of brainwaves that results. Next comes the technique of progressive and systematic physical relaxation, while the Hemisink frequencies are expanded to include additional forms of pink and white noise, baby. We've talked about this briefly before. Pink and white noise, all the different colored noises designed to put the physical body at the virtual threshold of sleep, as well as to, and kind of related to this, but not related to this, what's up with that Havana syndrome, baby? Havana syndrome, you guys have heard it all over the news for the past few years, little by little. Oh, they're going to Havana, sound waves, brain waves, or something that makes them puke. Talking about CIA agents or just like, you know, people out there doing activities out in Cuba, other places. All of a sudden they're feeling like, oh, seizure, vomiting, nausea, all that good stuff. We can really, you know, affect each other using sound waves. Fun fact, but what's up with that? Pink and white noises. Sorry about that, we just got sidetracked. Okay, next comes the technique of progressive and systematic physical relaxation, while the Hemisink frequencies are expanded to include additional forms of pink and white noise designed to put the physical body at the virtual threshold of sleep, as well as to calm the left hemisphere of the mind while raising the right hemisphere to a state of heightened attentiveness. Once all of this is achieved, the participant is invited to envisage, I hate this word, creation of an energy balloon comprised of an energy flow beginning at the center of the top of the head and extending down in all direction to the feet. The energy involved in this flow then proceeds up through the body and back out into the balloon pattern again. The energy balloon, which sets up a pattern very reminiscent of the cosmic egg discussed earlier, not only enhances bodily energy flow and encourages early achievement of a suitable resonant state, but it also designed to provide protection against conscious entities possessing lower energy levels, which the participant might encounter in the event that he achieves an out-of-body state. It serves a precautionary purpose in the unlikely event that the participant's first out-of-body experience involves direct projection outside the terrestrial sphere. Jeez, you go ahead and all of a sudden, whoa, look at the camera, it's lopsided. Hold on. Number 30, advanced techniques. Having reached focus 10, the participant is now ready to endeavor to achieve a state of sufficiently expanded awareness to begin actually interacting with dimensions beyond those associated with his experience of physical reality. This state is called focus 12 and involves conscious efforts on his part, while additional forms of pink and white noise enter the sound stream being directed into his ear from the gateway tape. Once the participant has achieved this state of a greatly expanded awareness, he is ready to begin employing a series of specific techniques or tools, as the Monroe Institute characterizes them, which enable him to manipulate his newly found expanded awareness to obtain practical, useful feedback of value for promoting self-discovery and personal growth. The specific techniques involved are described individually below. All right, so we're going to go into the techniques, baby. A, problem solving. This technique involves identifying fundamental problems which the individual wishes to see solved, filling his expanded awareness with his perception of these problems and then projecting them out into the universe. In this way, the individual enlists the assistance of what the Monroe Institute calls his higher self, in other words, his expanded consciousness, to interact with the universal hologram to obtain the information required to solve the problem. This approach may be used to solve personal difficulties, technical problems in the realm of physics, mathematics, etc., practical demonstration problems, and so on. Responses to the problem-solving technique may be received almost immediately, but often they come based on developing intuition over the next 2 or 3 days. Frequently, the response comes in the form of sudden holistic perception, in which the individual suddenly finds that he simply knows the answer in all of its ramifications and completely in context, sometimes without even being able to put his newly found perception into words, at least initially. In some cases, the response may even arrive in the form of visual symbols, which the individual will see with his mind while he is in the focus 12 state, and which he will have to interpret after his return to the normal consciousness. All right, so you're gonna be flying, baby. B, patterning. This technique involves the use of the consciousness to achieve desired objectives in the physical, emotional, intellectual sphere. It involves concentration on the desired objective while in a focus 12 state, extension of the individual's perception of that objective into the whole expanded consciousness, and its projection into the universe with the intention that the desired objective is already a matter of established achievement, which is destined to be realized within the time frame specified. This particular methodology is based on the belief that the thought patterns generated by our consciousness is in a state of expanded awareness create holograms which represent the situation we desire to bring out. In doing so, establish the basis for actual realization of the goal. Once the thought-generated hologram of the sought-after objective is established in the universe, it becomes an aspect of reality which interacts with the universal hologram to bring about the desired objective, which might not under other circumstances ever occur. In other words, the technique of patterning recognizes the fact that since consciousness is the source of all reality, our thoughts have the power to influence the development of reality in time-space as it applies to us if those thoughts can be projected with the adequate intensity. However, the more complicated the objective sought and the more radically it departs from our current reality, the more time the universal hologram will need to reorient our reality sphere to accommodate our desire. Monroe trainers caution against attempting to force the pace of this process because the individual could succeed in dislocating his existing reality with drastic consequences. You're gonna be tripping, baby, so be careful out there. Color breathing. Color breathing. The next technique is called color breathing and is designed to use the expanded awareness and highly focused attentiveness associated with the focus 12 state to imagine various colors in a particularly intense and vivid manner so as to use them to resonate with and turn to activate the body's own energies. Fundamentally, in terms of practical application, it is healing technique which is designed to restore the body and to enhance its physical capabilities by balancing, revitalizing, and retuning bodily energy flows. It is predicted on the principle that the body's electromagnetic field is capable of altering its response pattern so as to entrain energy from the Earth's electrostatic field for its own use. Various colors envisioned in the imagination as part of the technique cue the mind as to which frequencies and what specific amplitudes are desired in connection with this entrainment and the subsequent alterations in bodily energy flow patterns. That color has the capacity to affect the human mind is well known, and the effectuality of color in certain kinds of healing is a demonstrable fact. For example, application of an intense blue light to an area of physical tumescence leads to relatively rapid and easily observable reduction in the swelling, while red and to a lesser extent yellow have quite the opposite effect. However, in the Hemisink application of the technique, external light sources are not involved, but rather the mind is the sole agent of the healing and revitalization using color. D, energy bar tool. Magic wands and enchanted scepters have been part of the folklore and occult practices of many cultures. The scepters, staff, and maces carried by monarchs and high priests alike occur with such frequency in the history of bygone eras as to suggest that the very least these items are aspect of some type of archetypical symbol which the human mind seems to appreciate, perhaps quite subliminally. In any case, the energy bar tool technique involves envisaging a small, intensely pulsating dot of light which the participant charges in his imagination with enormous energy until it is virtually pulsating. The participant then extrudes the dot into the shape of a sparkling vibration cylinder of energy, which he then uses to channel forces from the universe to selected parts of his body for purposes of healing and revitalization. E. Remote viewing. In addition, the energy bar tool is used as a portal for initiating a follow-on technique called remote viewing. In this context, the participant turns his bar of energy into a whirling vortex through which he sends his imagination in search of a new and illuminating insight. The apparent purpose of the symbolism involved in the vortex seems to be cue to the subconsciousness and convey to its instructions as to what the participant wishes to do, but in terms of nonverbal symbols which the right hemisphere of the mind is capable of understanding. Good Lord. F, baby, living body map. This technique provides amplification for application of the energy bar tool as a means of healing specific areas of systems of the human body. The configuration of the participant's body is imagined, and the various major systems such as the nervous and circulatory systems are envisaged in appropriate colors within the confines of the outline being held in the imagination. The energy bar tool is then applied to energizing, balancing, and healing in whatever manner the participant desires. In the process, the participant's visualization various streams of colors of energy flowing out of the tool into the organ system or area upon which the revitalization or healing application is being made. Since colors are the result of differing wavelengths of light, which is to say energy at various frequencies, this technique operates on the assumption that as the human body is composed of energy, it can be vitalized and healed through the additive application of additional energy, provided that the energy is applied in the appropriate form. Okay, get your form right. It's all in your form, baby. G, focus. 15, focus 15, travel into the past. Go into the past. All the preceding techniques are conducted at the level of expanding awareness known as focus 12. However, the technique of time travel into the past involves further expansions of consciousness through the inclusion of additional levels of sound on the Hemisink tapes. Some of the sound is probably merely an intensification of the basic Hemisink frequencies being designed to further modify brainwave frequency and amplitude. Other aspects of the added sound patterns appear to be designed to provide subtle, almost subliminal suggestions to the mind as to what is desired by way of further expanded consciousness, so as to support the verbal suggestions and instructions also contained on the tape. Even the instructions are highly symbolic, with time being visualized as a huge wheel in the universe with various spokes, each of which gives access to a different part of the participant's past. Focus 15 is very advanced state and is extremely difficult to achieve. Probably less than 5% of all participants in any given gateway experience actually fully achieve the Focus 15 state during the course of the approximately 7 days of training. Nonetheless, Monroe Institute trainers affirm with enough practice, eventually Focus 15 can be achieved. They also state that not only the individual's past is available for examination by one who has achieved Focus 15, but other aspects of the past with which the individual himself has no connection may also be accessed. Dipping into the past, baby. H, focus 21, it goes deeper. The future. The last and most advanced of all the focus states associated with Gateway Training Program involves involvement of outside boundaries of time-space, as in Focus 15, but with attention to discovering the further rather than the past. The individual who has achieved this state has reached a truly advanced level, except in unusual circumstances. It is probably not attainable except by those who have conditioned themselves through long application of meditation, or by those who have participated in long and hard, thorough use of the Hemisink tapes for a period of months, if not years. 31, the out-of-body movement. This remarkable phenomena has been saved for discussion and detail until last because of the interest which it occasions and special circumstances involved in its attainment. Monroe Institute stresses that the Gateway program was not established solely for the purpose of enabling participants to obtain the out-of-body state, nor does the program guarantee that more participants will succeed in doing it during the course of the training at the Institute. Only one tape out of the many which make up the Gateway experiences is devoted to the technique involved in out-of-body movement. Basically, these techniques are merely designed to make it easier for the individual to achieve the out-of-body state when his brainwave pattern and personal energy level have reached a point that he is in apparent harmony with the surrounding electromagnetic environment, such that he feels that he has reached the threshold where separation is a possibility. To facilitate achieving the out-of-body state, Bob Monroe, the founder of Monroe Institute, is quoted in a recent magazine article as saying that in order to assist the participant, the particular Hemisink tape concerned with that technique employs beta signals of around 2,877.3 CPS cycles per second. Since 30 to 40 CPS is considered to be normal range for beta brainwave signals, those associated with the wakeful state, it is apparent that the Monroe Institute is convinced that the same heightened state of brainwave frequency output which promotes altered states of consciousness is also an important consideration assisting and achieving of out-of-body states. The actual techniques employed for separating from the body involves such simple maneuvers as rolling out, lifting out after the fashion of a telephone pole, wherein the individual separates in a rigid head-first manner such that he finds himself standing at an attention at the foot of his physical body and sliding out through either end of his body. Yikes. Role of REM sleep. It is interesting to know that Bob Monroe informed the Gateway class that finished 7 of May 1983 that an ex-trainer of his operating in Charlottesville, Virginia, found that he could guarantee out-of-body movements by bringing participants down into a rapid eye movement (REM) state of sleep and then use the Hemisink tape technique. This may well be a function of the fact that most of it, if not all the people, reputedly go into an out-of-body state during REM sleep. REM sleep is the deepest possible level of ordinary sleep and involves complete disengagement of the body's motor cortex functions from the neck down and nearly complete suppression of consciousness in the left brain hemisphere. The effect of this is to put the body in a state of complete stillness so far as the skeletal muscle structure is concerned, thereby further promoting the state of deep rest needed to eliminate the bifurcation echo. In addition, it leaves the right hemisphere of the brain free to respond to the instructions and suggestions contained on the Gateway tape. However, use of the Hemisink tapes at this point may be less a factor in actually achieving the out-of-body state than it is a matter of focusing the brain enough so that the residual memory of having naturally achieved an out-of-body state is carried into the waking state. Indeed, it may be even postulated that some dreams associated with sleep, with deep level of sleep, are in fact functions of the same kind of altered consciousness involved in their interaction with the universe that plays a role in all of the focus 12, 15, and 21 states described above. The difference between those states and the conditions of the mind in REM sleep seems to be that the left hemisphere is almost totally disengaged in the latter experience, such that memory of what was achieved in the altered states of consciousness cannot usually be retrieved by consciousness desire, because the left hemisphere has no knowledge of its existence on its location in the right hemisphere. Admittedly, some people can be trained to remember their REM state dreams through intense conditioning in waking states, but even that may be more of a function of establishing pathways in the right hemisphere, which the left hemisphere can access following re-entry into the wakeful state, than it is an indication of any specific left hemisphere conscious involvement in the process during REM sleep. In any event, the three apparent conditions required for voluntary inducing an out-of-body state in most individuals seems to be: 1, achievement of a state of profound quiet in the body such that the bifurcation echo fades and resonance at approximately 7 Hz is established; 2, synchronization of the two brain hemispheres wave patterns; and 3, subsequent stimulation of the right hemisphere of the mind to attain a state of heightened alertness, which of course interferes with brain hemisphere synchronization, but not until a sufficient level of enhanced frequency range has first been established to help achieve the out-of-body states. Okay, you got all that? Good. Number 33, information collection potential. The information acquisition potential associated with the out-of-body state seems to attract the most attention from the standpoint of developing practical application for the gateway technique. Unfortunately, although the out-of-body state can apparently be achieved by many people without excessive expenditure of time or effort, the purpose to which it can be put are currently limited by the fact that although individuals in the state may travel anywhere on an instantaneous basis in either the terrestrial or other spheres, information distortion in the former context remains a major concern. To date, according to one of the trainers at Monroe Institute, numerous experiments have been conducted involving persons moving from one coast to the other in the out-of-body state to read a series of 10 computer-generated numbers in a university laboratory. Although most have acquired enough of the digits to make clear that their consciousness was present, none have ever succeeded in getting all 10 correct. This seems to be a function of the fact that physical reality in the present is not the only holographic influence which the individual may encounter in an out-of-body state. There are also energy patterns left by people or events occurring at the same physical site, being viewed but from the past rather than the present. In addition, since thoughts are the product of energy patterns and energy patterns are reality, it may also be possible that the individuals encounter thought forms while in an out-of-body state which mingle with physical reality and are not easily differentiated. Finally, as Melissa Jagger writes, there is another potential problem area in the sense that holograms can be viewed pseudo-sopically, that is to say, inside, out, or backwards, just as well as they can be seen in proper perspective. Some of the distortions occurring may ultimately prove to be traceable to this cause because in the out-of-body state, an individual may perceive the holographic energy patterns given off by people or things interacting in time-space reality in a somewhat distorted form. Number 34, belief system considerations. In 1967, Alexandra David Neal and Lama Yangden wrote a book entitled Secret Oral Teachings in Tibetan Buddhist Sects, from which the following quote is taken: "The tangible world is movement, say the masters, not a collection of moving objects, the movement itself. There are no objects in movement. It is the movement which constitutes the objects which appear to us. They are nothing but movement. This movement is continued and infinitely rapid succession of flashes of energy, in Tibetan Sol or Shog, hoping I'm pronouncing those right. All objects perceptible to our senses, all phenomena of whatever kind and whatever aspect they may assume, are constituted by a rapid succession of instantaneous events. The classic description of the universal hologram is to be found in a Hindu sutra which says, and in quotes, "In the heaven of Indra there is said to be a network of pearls so arranged that if you look at one, you see all the others reflected in it." That's beautiful. I've cited this quotation because it shows that the concept of the universe, which at least some physicists are now coming to accept, is identical in its essential aspects with one known to the learned elite, is selected civilizations and cultures of high attainment in the ancient world. The concept of the cosmic egg, for example, is well known to the scholars familiar with ancient writings of the Eastern religions. Nor are the theories presented in this paper at variance with the essential tenets of the Judeo-Christian system of thought. The concept visible reality, i.e. the created world, as being an emanation of an omnipotent and omniscient divinity who is completely unknowable in his primary state of being. The absolute at rest in infinity is a concept straight out of a Hebrew mystical philosophy. Even the Christian concept of the Trinity shines through the description of the absolute as presented in this paper. The description of energy totally at rest in infinity fits the Christian metaphysical concept of the Father, while the infinite self-consciousness resident in that energy, providing the motive forceful to bring a portion of that energy into motion to create reality, corresponds with the sun. This is so because in order to obtain self-consciousness, the consciousness of the Absolute must project a hologram of itself and then perceive it. That hologram is a mirror image of the Absolute in infinity, still exists outside time and space, but is one step removed from the Absolute and is the actual agent of all creation, all reality. And the eternal thought of concept of self which results from this self-consciousness serves as the motivational aspect. All right. Almost there. Bad boys and bad gals, we're almost there. Number 37, motivational aspect. It is a step-by-step procedure which involves repetitive practice of the techniques concerned, using each new insight as a means of penetrating further during the next practice session. But the rate of progress is so much faster with the gateway approach than it is with transcendental meditation or other forms of mental self-discipline, and its horizon seems to be so much wider that the discipline needed to practice it would seem to be within the means of even the impatient, result-oriented, skeptical pragmatist of our society. Unlike yoga and other forms of Eastern mental discipline, gateway does not require the infinite patience and total personal subservience to and faith in a system of discipline designed to absorb all individuals' energies over most of a lifetime. Rather, it will begin to produce at least the minimal results within a relatively short time, such that enough feedback is available to motivate and energize the individual to continue working with it. Indeed, the speed with which an individual may expect to progress seems less a function of the number of hours spent practicing than it is a question of the speed with which he or she is able to use the insights gained to release anxieties and stresses within both the mind and the body. These points of energy blockage seem to provide the principal barriers to achieving the enhanced energy states and focus of mind needed for rapid progression. The more compulsive, the more uptight the individual may be at the outset, the more barriers he or she will initially encounter to achieving a deep or immediate experience. But as the insight begin to come and the blockages begin to dissolve, the way ahead becomes increasingly clear, and the value of gateway moves from the status of a matter of intellectual assessment to one of personal experience. 38, conclusion. There's a sound, rational basis in terms of physical science parameters for considering gateway to be plausible in terms of its essential objectives. Intuitional insights of not only personal but of a practical and professional nature would seem to be within bounds of reasonable expectations. However, a phased approach for entering the gateway experience in an accelerated mode would seem to be required if the time needed to reach advanced states of altered consciousness is to be brought within more manageable limits from the standpoint of establishment or organization-wide exploitation of gateway's potential. The most promising approach suggested in the foregoing study involves the following steps. A. Begin by using the gateway Hemisink tapes to achieve enhanced brain focus and to induce hemisphere synchronization. B. Then add a strong REM sleep frequencies to induce left brain quiescence and deep physical relaxation. C. Provide hypnotic suggestion designed to enable an individual to induce deep auto-hypnotic state at will. D. Use auto-hypnotic suggestion to attain much enhanced focus of concentration and motivation in rapidly progressing through Focus 12 exercises. E. Then repeat steps A and B following use of the auto-hypnotic suggestion that an out-of-body movement will occur and be remembered. F. Repeat step E to achieve facility in gaining out-of-body state under conscious control. Alter hypnotic suggestion to stress ability to consciously control out-of-body movement and maintain it even after REM sleep state ends. G. Approach Focus 15 and 21 objectives, escape from time and space and interest, and interact within new dimensions from the out-of-body perspectives. H. Use multi-focus approach to solve problems of distortion in terrestrial information gathering trips. This approach involves the use of 3 individuals in the out-of-body state, one viewing the target object here in time-space, one viewing it at Focus 15 as it slips into the immediate past, and one viewing it at the Focus 21 as it slips from the immediate future. Debrief all 3 and compare data gathered from 3 points of view if care is taken to ensure that the 3 3, all go out of body together in the same environment. Their consciousness energy system should resonate in sympathetic oscillation. They can turn into the same target on different plane dimensions with greater effectiveness. I, encourage pursuit of full self-knowledge by all individuals involved in the foregoing experiments to enhance objectivity and out-of-body observation and thinking, and to remove personal energy blockages likely to retard rapid progress. J, be intellectually prepared to react to possible encounters with intelligent, non-corporeal energy forms when time-space boundaries are exceeded. Yikes. Be intellectually prepared to react to possibly encounters with intelligent K. Arrange to have groups of people in focus 12 state unite their altered consciousness to build holographic patterns around sensitive areas to repulse possible unwanted out-of-body presence. That's like having a bad trip. You just want to have good peeps around. Encourage more advanced gateway participants to build holographic patterns of successful attainment and rapid progress for advanced colleagues to assist them in progressing through the gateway system. If these experiments are carried through, it is to be hoped that we will truly find a gateway and to the realm of practical application for the whole system of techniques which comprise it. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Bibliography: Bentov Isaac, Stalking the Wild Pendulum. Published 77, Ferguson, Maryland. Changing Reality. Whole bunch of authors. And that's it, baby. It's 29 pages. I just read it all for you, verbatim. But again, you can find that on cia.gov/reading-room/doc/CIA-RDP96-0078 R00780021016-5.pdf. Got it? It's called Analysis and an Assessment of Gateway Process. What do you guys think? Can we get there? Can we do it? Whew, that was a mouthful. Man, so this week we're doing things differently. Alright, your boys here messing around, trying to figure out what the next steps are, visualizing, meditating, concentrating. We want to get the jokes to the next level. We're reaching into all the pockets, dabbling in all sorts of, knowledge, experimenting, asking questions. I wonder what's out there. I wonder what we're capable of. And I wonder where the future is going. In great, bright places, of course. We're going to finish it off by watching a cute little video. This little monkey.
Grammarly helps you work more efficiently, which makes accomplishing your work goals easier than ever before.
Oh, yeah. We're going to just watch this bad boy together. Hold on. Getting there. Baby enjoys a fruit party on a watermelon truck. Say word. That's days of our lives, basically, right? Get the bank, get the money, monkeying around, right? Get the cash, run to the car. Who's driving it? Who knows? But that's basically us. And then you find yourself a little mate. Oh, poochie poo. What's going on? You want to get in my whip? Want to go for a ride around the city? Let's do it. I'll give you money, dude. I'll give you money for that fruit. Packing on the fruit, loading it on, into the truck. It's beautiful. How cute is this fucking monkey, dude? Man, forget dogs. If that thing doesn't grow, get yourself one of these. Look at that. What a beauty. And then you drive around. Basically what we were doing, right? Same thing. Literally the same thing that we're doing. Drive around from one place to another, get a bunch of things, exchange the monies, put it on, load it, unload it, and then Go to town, baby. Go to town. Fast forward. What's happening here? Look at this. How fucking cute is that? Love you guys. If you like these videos, if you like monkeys, and if you like this guy, and if you like yourself, and you want to explore the world and you want to ask questions, go out and hit those like buttons on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram. Go on, what is it, the YouTubes? That's right, search Rob Satry for the full-length videos, and you want to check out Patreon when, you want to do something a little bit different. Go ahead and do it. We'll see each other soon. Have yourselves a wonderful week, everybody. Peace out.